Well, an outstanding interview just prior there in Serious Country. If you missed it, please go back into podcast and check out Jack Keys, KPMG's Insight Analyst, as he sets the scene of this week's opinion maker around the future of food being here already. Well, nearly 2 years ago, NZX's Head of Analytics, Julia Jones, penned a letter from 2030 back to 2019, which explained what she thinks our farms of 2030 and our systems around producing food and fibre would look like if we don't deviate from a path of staying at the forefront of an ever-changing world. It's a New Zealand food and fibre production system proudly farming animals and crops in a whole system approach with a diversity of mindset, proudly regenerating our people, our soils, our water and our economy. And sometimes I do wish I could transport to 2030, like I dream of Jeannie, just for a holiday. And then I could come back and report, just as Julia did, on, if this is true, because I really do hope it is, and hope something I live on. And I believe we are on the right track. But does our next guest, Julia Jones, 2 years later from penning that letter? So, Julia, do you believe we are on the right track?
Oh, look, no one picked the pandemic. I guess we all wish we could. Hindsight's a beautiful thing. I think we're progressing well. Look, there's probably one key factor that I am concerned about at the moment, and I feel like there's divisions. The ag sector is being a little bit divided, and I think we're being divided within the sector. I think others are dividing it. And I think when people divide, they will conquer, and I am a little bit concerned. I think we are on track. I think we understand that we need to change. We understand that the future is going to be uncertain, but I am a little bit worried that we've got through the pandemic beautifully, but what we've got to realise is that the world's going to shift forward, and we have to keep shifting too. So we're not moving at the pace. We're not moving as fast as we should. Sorry, long answer to a very short question.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do really want to unpack exactly who and what, but I won't go that far, Julia. But what I do want to touch on with you is one of the points that Jack Keys made around that the world's not evolving equally. Our emerging markets of China, Africa, India are just discovering, the amazing protein ingredient that we produce. Yet our wealthy US consumer and European consumer is very advanced now and is understanding, the role that personalised nutrition and the likes of subscription e-commerce type products is having in the way that they consume. When we've got so many billions of people in that emerging markets, should we really worry about how we traditionally produce food?
I don't know if we should worry, more so just be really aware of what's happening offshore, and whether we like it or not, the pandemic has in fact isolated us a little from the rest of the world, and we don't have as much awareness as we did before. And yes, we've got fantastic people in market that are feeding information back. But I know for me personally, until you actually go into market and you understand what's happening, it's really hard to have the insights to the perspective. But as far as, the populations are growing, there is going to continue to be plenty of demand for animal protein and plant-based protein. So although the plant-based protein market is growing at a great rate or not, so too, and as you just mentioned, and Jack sort of talks about the emerging markets, the protein base is, because protein, if the likes of Africa where there's malnourishment, the animal protein actually brings people back to a nutritional level far quicker than a lot of the plant-based will.
Yeah, and the thing is too, just talking about the letter that you penned, it was more so talking about how we'd achieved some of the subsector divisions, the duplication had disintegrated, the investment was more significant in science and education. Here at home, in the last couple of years, have we moved any further the dial on that? Because, 2030 is now not that far away.
So I'm going to be honest, this potentially is an unpopular opinion. I almost think that we have been stuck in concrete and we're not moving. I think there's a lot of good talk going on. I think we've got minds that potentially brought us to the position we're in now trying to fix the problem, and if they were going to fix the problem, they would have fixed it. We've got too much duplication. We shouldn't have two pastoral industry bodies. They should be brought into one. We've got to actually start thinking about New Zealand the ag sector as a sector and not individual subsectors, because ultimately there's space for all of us. So this is not about it should all be kiwi fruit or it should all be beef or it should all be dairy. We actually need both. Well, both. We need all, and we need to have that diversity. And I just don't think, we don't have a strategy that fits across the ag sector. We've got these little independent voices that are speaking for every farmer, and no one has a right to speak for every farmer because we have lots of different farmers with lots of different voices, and I just don't think they're all being heard.
Yep, and when the communication is out there, it's on different styles as well, on whether we should be defensive to change or not. That's certainly what I find. Julia, you have been a member of the Primary Sector Council that was appointed by our Minister for Agriculture, Damien O'Connor. It has now come to the end of its 2-year term. So what happened there, and why is that we're not picking up the work that has been visionary of where we should be going?
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting one. And again, this is probably going to not be very popular, but there is work happening in that space. So there are some people, and look, Lane is doing a really good job, and he's working with the chap Jared Mayer, and there's a group together. But this is what kind of cracks me up, right? So we've got our farming leaders group, and we've got all these leader groups that are actually the same leaders, just in different groups with different names. So we're kind of, and I'm not being awful, and I'm not trying to say that they're not amazing people and that they have done good stuff, but I'm calling it, like, it's just, if we don't actually have new thinking, and I don't mean, I mean like emerging people coming through, and we don't actually start connecting. We're making decisions for the future without including those who are leading already in the younger, or, I don't know. It just winds me up. I mean, there is work getting done with the Primary Sector Council post, but again, you've got these groups that are fighting amongst who's more important, and who should be a priority, and who's the bigger exporter and who's the smaller exporter, and like, actually, what's good for New Zealand, what's good for our sector, and everything should have our communities at the heart of it, because basically this is people's livelihoods we're all arguing about, with a bunch of egos at the table that have been around forever, that we just keep recycling over and over again. So where's the new thinking?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was having a conversation over coffee yesterday morning about how there's a vocal minority in the primary sector just as much as outside of the primary sector, and we don't concentrate on that, and who has the God-given right for a louder voice than another. But then how do you be represented of landowners, of farmers and growers and their concerns?
Yeah, and I think so we've actually got to stop trying to put people in buckets. I think, the reality of it is, and what breaks my heart is I genuinely love regenerative, right? So when I see those photos and all those sorts of things, but I also love seeing the guys that are what they class conventional and non-regenerative as well. So I think we've actually got to have a bit more acceptance, and this is going to sound all very cheesy and fluffy, and sorry to those listening, but we actually have to stop thinking that exactly what we do is perfect and the other guy's wrong. We've got this real mindset that if you're not regenerative, you're terrible. If you are regenerative, you're terrible. Everybody's terrible, apparently, and everybody's perfect. So let's actually work together and think about the country, and think about the industry, and think about our communities and what's best for them. Because you know what, Sarah, you and I could be neighbours, have the same topography. We just make decisions differently, and that's okay. We don't have to have a group telling us, that you have system this or system that. Like, actually, and that's where I want to see our industry bodies lead more around accepting of difference and making sure that we're actually giving people options or choices. Look, we've just got to be, and it's going to sound cliche and cheesy, but it's okay for us to be in different vehicles on this journey. We don't have to be in the same car together. But let's make sure we're on the same road, facing the same direction.
Let's turn to our processes and them being the most connected to our consumers' needs and driving the conversation back. They are also motivated by consistency of supply and an all-year-round supply into a commodity market as well, which also sends the wrong incentive.
Yeah, look, I mean, I do feel for them. They've got bills to pay, so they do a good job of that. So it is hard to move away. And when the money's there, it's just, I think we've got to probably shift our mindset. And this is not just our process, this is New Zealand corporate everywhere, to a more long-term mindset. So do we make, I guess it's like that example to have with the kids. Do you have one marshmallow now, or do you wait 10 more minutes and we'll give you 2. And I think we're all eating the marshmallows right away and not waiting for the 2 marshmallows in the future. So we're going into market, and yes, we are going great guns and prices are good and we're doing really well, but we have to make sure that we don't, and I don't think any of the processes really are, rest on our laurels and not look for different opportunities that are emerging in different markets to make sure. Because the pace of change is so fast. It's faster than it's ever been. I said that 2 years ago, and it's faster than then. The food service industry, the food sectors all around the world are shifting really, really fast. China is moving at a great rate of knots, and just keep up with what's happening there is amazing. So I think for our processes, again, there's a functional thing. They have capital. They have big lots of capital that are invested that they have to actually make work. They can't end up with stranded assets. And so they have to get the volume through. But you're right. Where are the signals? What are we actually doing? Are we half pregnant? Like, what are we? Are we these, value selling businesses? Are we commodities? And actually just be bloody honest about what you are. You are just wanting to sell commodities and you are making money out of it. Just say you are. Don't pretend to be something you're not.
Well, this is the thing. I had a conversation with my partner in the long 5-hour drive home from the Wanaka show on Sunday, and we talked about if we went farming, we would make a conscious business decision to farm to nature, not to farm to market. Yet we're not incentivized to farm to nature, yet we are being regulated too. Yeah.
Yeah, and look, I mean, I don't want to, I'm not, please don't send any complaints, and I'm not trying to say that regulation is good. My concern with regulation, though, is it brings the bottom up. And it's following what investors want around the world. It's following what consumers want. It's amazing the things that are happening globally around nature, around climate change, in and outside of ag. I'm telling you, it's not only ag getting hammered by this. This is actually every business in the world is under a microscope in regards to impact. And so, but again, when we go back to ag, we're food. We are the human life force. And I don't mean that as in we are perfect and we never need to get better. We've all got to better our best. But, the reality of it is we've got to care about our planet. We've got to care about our communities and produce the very best that we can.
Yeah, absolutely. Julia, I just want to ask you to please pen a letter to 2022.
I'll give it a go. We just need to accept difference. And that sounds really cheesy. We've got to stop trying to silence different opinions. And, I love, one thing we can all have on Twitter, but you know what I love about it is I get challenged and I love reading people's different opinions, and I don't have to agree with it. It doesn't mean I don't respect other people's views. And I feel the same in a lot of the groups that I read through. So I don't know. Sorry, I've really waffled on. I think you've just hit some triggers for me today with just some real passions that let's get on and do some stuff, and let's be really proud of what we do, but real about what else we need to get done.
Julia, can I just say, as females, we've got to stop saying sorry and actually thank you for just your brutal honesty, because that's why we all collectively love you.
Oh, thank you. I look forward to the complaints coming in.
I'll forward them all to you because I know you agree with difference. So there we go. Fantastic. Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure. NZX Head of Analytics, Julia Jones. Now, coming up to wrap up the messages from Jack and Julia is our panel this week. Food HQ Business Development Manager Amos Pelferman. What is he seeing at the front line of food innovation? And joining me in studio is Left Foods Ross Milne to explain the work that former dairy giants Maury Leyland and John and Maury Leyland Pino, my apologies, are investing in, and how the animal and plant can both be a part of the solution. All that up next here on Sarah's Country.
Oh, nice boots.
Yeah, thanks. They're new.
Ben, you alright?
Oh, yeah, sorry, mate. Just meerkatting pretty hard, eh? Yeah, I just said to myself, Ben, work hard.
You deserve new boots.